Welcome to the Roller Coaster of Midlife. We're live today, and this is where we dive into the thrilling highs and the challenging lows of navigating this wild ride that we call midlife. I mean, let's face it, there are some days it feels like we are on the scariest ride of our lives, and you're holding on for dear life. But somewhere between the adrenaline and the chaos, there's something that truly magical happens when we learn how to embrace midlife and we connect with our authentic selves. And I know, after decades of checking other people's boxes and trying to meet other people's expectations, the big question is, where do we even begin to connect with our authentic selves?
Yeah.
And today I have Holly Boxenhorn joining me again. She was a previous guest on the Roller Coaster podcast, and we're going to chat a bit more about how to truly embrace midlife and what it's all about. Welcome back, Holly.
Such a pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
So, okay, let's start off with, because we hear this a lot. You have to embrace midlife and be your authentic self. We
Right.
hear those buzzwords.
Yeah.
But nobody's actually telling us what that means and how to go about doing it.
Yeah.
So maybe you can share your thoughts on what authenticity is and how that sort of affects midlife.
100%. Listen, I do think midlife is a time in our life that we do us, finally. We do ourselves. With that being said, I think we have literally a trifecta of challenges that makes it very difficult for us midlife women. I think we have the reality that it's not uncommon to absorb other people's standards and agendas when we're growing up. And suddenly we're not really living a life that's true to ourselves, but to what other people had in mind for us, whether it's our families, our partners, the media, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, women commonly are people pleasers. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's just we are nurturing and we're kind, and we tend to lose sight of what's best for us. That's first and foremost. Secondly, us ex-Jenners and baby boomers, we have been spoon-fed from day one. We can have it all.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, remember the well-intentioned moms who didn't grow up with the rights as women that we had. Those commercials, remember those Angelique commercials? You could fry it up in the bacon, bring it home in a pan, and never let him forget he's a man. I mean, come on.
I don't know that one, but you know what does spring to mind? I even want to say something as basic as a maxi pad commercial. Somehow let us, reinforce that message that you can have it all and life is just this wonderful rainbows and unicorns type of thing. And it's not.
No, and you can't. Listen, I say to many of my clients, you could have it all, just not all at once, because something's going to give. And
Right.
so what's happened in our generations, midlifers today, we were told we could have it all. And so we did it all. We juggled it all. And then we lost sight of who we are. So therein lies also the challenge of finding our true authentic self, because those habits and patterns are well into place. The third problem that creates the challenge is for us midlifers, we've changed. Everything in our life is changing up now. Who we were in our 20s and 30s, even in our 40s or early 40s, is not relevant to us maybe in our 50s and our 60s and our 70s. So who are we now? We only know who we were in the past. And so we often rely on old habits that did serve us well at one time, but just aren't cutting it anymore because it's not, it's not who we are anymore. So I think it's particularly challenging for us midlifers to find our true authentic self as a result of this trifecta thing that comes in for us.
And I think, part of it is also that sort of the flow that we went from daughter, wife, mother. Many of us sort of went through that in a relatively short period of time, but also in very young years. I mean, I look at we have two boys, they're 21 and 24. I was married at 21, and by 25, I was having my first. And I look at my guys and I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way. So when I look back and I'm like, well, it was somewhat normal, but I also never really had that opportunity to explore who I really was,
Yeah.
because, in a sense, I was programmed to become a wife and mother.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in any way. I love every aspect of it.
No, I get it, but
But
I think we are
there's still that
socialized.
piece. You
Yeah.
still have to know who you are. And
Yeah.
I think that's what many of us Gen Xers may have missed out on, is
Yeah.
that time to get to know who you are, because we were conditioned to start checking all of those boxes that society expected
Oh,
from
yeah.
us.
Oh, yeah, big time. And so it's so easy to lose sense of who we are and what's most important to us. And we don't even realize it. It's very, it's very subtle when it happens, because we're believing like, oh no, I do want this, but yet we're struggling in even enjoying it. And if
Yeah.
that's the case, then that's questionable in and of itself. But we never really ever stop and ask ourselves, does this work for me? Is this good for me? Is it serving me? And we don't, we just did it. We just did it. We were told do this, and that's what we did. And, again, that makes it's very challenging to shift gears now, to all of a sudden get introspective and start thinking about, what do I want? Who am I? What is most important to me? And so, and again, because we've changed a lot, just that sheer factor in itself is good. Even if, let's say, you were living true to yourself in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, you're changed. So living your true authentic self is going to be challenging unless you do some introspective work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And for me, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
I was not prepared whatsoever. I didn't even know to expect any of this. I was just basically under the impression that, menopause happens, you stop getting your period, you may go on hormones, and then life goes on.
Yeah.
There was no discussion around any of this. So that's
But
why
there
I think
wasn't ever any discussion.
no,
No
and I
one ever
think
talked about it.
and I think that's why it hit me so damn hard.
Yeah.
And then sort of you add to that was, a lot of guilt and shame around it.
You better believe it.
And then to even admit that I have a right to know who I am beyond being a wife and mom, as if
Yeah.
there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
That in itself takes time to get to sort of come to terms with. And I still feel somewhat judged when I say those words. And I probably just tried to, correct or justify my position when I said it earlier, because I'm still feeling like somebody's going to judge me for saying I want to be known as something more than wife and mom.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that. And it's funny, you say like it hit you like a ton of bricks. For myself, because I was a former practicing therapist and I've been in the industry for a long time. So I had, I'm self-aware. I'm pretty, so what I find amazing, honestly, Lucy, is the ebb and flow. It's like, wait a second. Why, how am I back here again? Why am I feeling like shit? Like, wait, I just resolved this. I worked it out. I've uncovered and got to the bottom of it. And the next curveball is hitting me. So what I find amazing is that I'm like, damn, how am I here again? Like, how am I feeling so low and, doubting myself again? And I'm doing this for a living. So for me, I find it just so utterly amazing, the up and down nature of it all. But really, it's not that unusual. It's the human experience. No growth isn't a linear process. We zig up and we zig down. But when we're zigging down, we seem to forget that about, like, everyone else can zig down. That's okay. That's normal. But when we're zigging down, we're like, oh, this is not good. I'm not comfortable. I'm ashamed. You say you're ashamed. Here I am. I'm a coach. I'm a former therapist. I should know better. I should be above it. Bullshit. I cut and bleed too. And that's the problem. Therein lies the problem, is that we don't really lean into the fact that every human being is going to have and experience painful, difficult emotions, and they don't go away. They just ebb and flow. We can get better at navigating them. That's what I do in helping women, is getting better at navigating them. But I tell my clients, you'll never eliminate it. You'll never eliminate it. Two ways. Like I told you before, dead people and psychopaths are the only two people who don't experience difficult, painful emotions. So Thankfully, you're not a psychopath, and thankfully, you're not dead. Therefore, you will experience difficult emotions. But with that being said, you'll also experience other wonderful emotions. It's just nothing is constant. I'm going to say one more thing. I find it so funny that when we're in a good place, we never say, God damn, I wish this good feeling would go away. God damn it. I wish it would just go away. But when we're in feeling shitty, we're like, oh my God, I gotta get out of this misery. I gotta get out of this misery. It's comical almost because we just don't realize it's just human nature. And if we could lean into it and not beat ourselves up and minimize and sugarcoat it or whack-a-mole it, then we'd all be better off and move through it more efficiently. At least I think so. I think so.
Yeah, and that's definitely, it is. It's almost like you have to have the lows in order to really appreciate the highs.
Yeah.
And when you become more resilient and you do some of this inner work, navigating the lows is a bit easier because you don't get stuck in, oh, this is forever. You have a better
Exactly.
understanding of, okay, this is just today. This is just this hour. This is just
Right.
this moment.
Right. Exactly.
And overall, when I want to say when you get through that first layer of dealing with all of that muck and gunk that we've built up over, the first 40, 50 years of our lives,
Yeah.
that's when you really develop that sense of empowerment. And it's because you've sort of reclaimed who you are, you're aligned more, and you're better able to make those decisions that reflect, your values, what's true to you.
Well, that's what I think the advantage of midlife really is, for a couple of reasons. Not only have we had many life lessons under our belts and we have gotten to know ourselves better, but we care a whole lot less what other people think. So we're not necessarily going on other people's agendas. But like we're in a place where we're done with feeling less than. We're really ready, to draw the line in the sand and step fuck over it, and just reclaim ourselves. Because you know what? Everything else we did before, we did all the nice. We checked all the boxes and it didn't get us anywhere. So, I think that, I actually just bought this. It's hysterical. I'm put it in social. I'm going to do a social post on it. It's a stone, and on it says, "Do not harm, but take no shit." So I love it because, of course, you want to be responsible. I'm not being like, a badass and being like, oh, I'm claiming my life and everyone else and my kids and my husband have to figure it all out. I'm doing me. But, it is a time in my life where I'm done with the bullshit, and I'm done with my own bullshit. I'm done with my own bullshitting of myself.
Yeah, that sort of the way we hold ourselves back. So I want to ask you this, or anybody that's, listening or watching. How many times have you wanted to perhaps have a do-over in some part of your life? And that's it, is everybody's had that, right?
Yeah.
And it struck me the other day, and it was really bizarre because I woke up and I had remembered part of my dream. And in part of my dream, I knew it was me, 100% me, not an illusion of me, nothing like that. Because normally when you're dreaming, you're like, I kind of think that's me, but this was definitely me. And I had this thought about, oh, this is a do-over. This is my chance for a do-over. And then I woke up and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, holy shit, that's what midlife is. Midlife is our time to sort of do over and be that person that we always knew that we were, but maybe we were afraid to be in the moment.
What is that quote? I think it's by Carl Jung. He says, up to the age of 40, we're just doing research. And that's, which is kind of, he's got a point.
It's true.
If you think about it, because listen, there are a couple of young women that I've worked with simply because moms have referred their young, adult children to me. But the truth is, and they can make radical change, but without a certain amount of years under your belt, living life, burning your hand over the stove, life experience. It's so vital to really being able to move forward powerfully. That's why I think there is a huge advantage in midlife. Of course it comes with limitations, as every decade comes with limitations, I think. When I was in my 20s, I was, I had lacked a lot of confidence. I didn't, know who I was. So every decade, I think, comes with disadvantages, and it's really more your perspective on really where you want to, keep that glass as half full or half empty. It's really on how you want to move forward. And I think you actually said it earlier when you said your perspective is different in that, you've been here before, that it's temporary.
Yeah.
It's not going to be forever. Maybe it might be for a couple of months, but in the past, you've gotten on the other side of it. And that's perspective. That's your ability to be able to say, this is not my final destination.
Well, it's because you've been through it enough times.
Yeah.
Like you've been through it enough times to know, okay, this may hurt, but I'm going to get through it.
Yep. And I'm also,
or this may be shitty. I'm going to get through it.
Yep.
Because we've done it enough times to realize we get through it, because guess what? We're still sitting here.
Yeah. Exactly.
It didn't break us.
Exactly.
And I guess you have to go through that enough times, unfortunately, before you can get through it.
I would say I had a solid, I mean, listen, I work with women in their 40s, but I don't really think I was really ready until I was 47, 48 to stop, to call bullshit on my own self. I think I was still conning myself and thinking that, well, if I just lock this in and I just lock that in, everything's going to be great. I don't think I really realized into the latter part of my 40s that I was like, no, that doesn't happen. That's not true. Life is challenging and there is no securing anything. And if you think about COVID was the biggest, in your face, think you have control and you can plan your life. Not so much, So I think it wasn't until my later 40s did I realize oh, no, it's not about, getting to this destination that I will arrive at last and, be okay. That's not the case.
No, I agree. I just turned 50, and I think the biggest thing is just sort of realizing, who am I editing myself for?
Yeah.
If I want to do this thing, then who am I waiting for permission from?
Yeah.
And why, why would I let my own limiting beliefs and my own inner critic stop me? Because so I go out there and I make a fool of myself. So what? It
also gets tricky, I think, because even for my own self, I think about I'm empty nesting now. My son is going to be 23 in July, and I have a 20-year-old daughter, so she's going to be a junior in college. And so I thought oh, this was a time in my life where I was just going to really take off with my career and go crazy. And I actually realized I kind of want to stop and smell the roses a little bit too. So it gets tricky with, how much I really want to, I love my work, but what's the balance? Because I realize I kind of like slowing down a little bit. And in order to really amp it up, I've got to be, ready for that. So I find it sometimes a little bit tricky between, the balance, between going for it and at the same time being kind of want to just chill out and read a good book.
And being okay. And that's the sort of the thing I catch myself doing, is because I am allowing more time to just, sit on the back deck and read a book for 2 hours.
Yeah.
But the trick is not shooting all over yourself and they're oh, you should really go inside and plan the next show, or you should really go in and schedule more social media.
Yeah, it's getting comfortable with that. I know sometimes I purposely designate downtime for myself, and I could literally feel ornery doing it. I'm almost a little out of my skin. I'm Holly, man, you got to learn how to chill out. You've got because we're so programmed to go to do to do that. It's actually I learned this technique from, I'm trying to remember her name. She calls them emotional push-ups. When we do something that emotionally is uncomfortable, but a push-up, when you do one of them, of course it's uncomfortable, but when we do a bunch of them, it really builds up our, our strength. So if we continue to do emotionally uncomfortable, things, whether it's put our phone away, sit and be with ourselves. Meditating is really hard. Like those kind of things. Those are emotional push-ups, sitting with uncomfortable feelings of what it's about. Aging is uncomfortable for you, like sitting with it and, building up your resiliency and being in that uncomfortability is something that I think us midlifers could really benefit from, because we need practice. We need to flex that muscle, so to say, to get, but it's uncomfortable at first. It's really uncomfortable.
It is. And that's where, when you start talking about, self-reflection and self-acceptance, those are some of the journeys that we have to take so that we do engage in our authentic self.
Yes.
And they can be really, really uncomfortable because, you do sort of have to look to your past and decide, what you do and what you don't want in your life.
Yeah.
And learn how to create those boundaries and decide, no, this is no longer good for me.
Yeah.
And it could be, friendships or family members that, have always been there.
Yeah.
But when you start to realize that that's not a good situation for me, or that's not a good relationship for me, learning to set those boundaries and to accept who you are and what's best for you.
Yeah.
That's not always easy, but you kind of have to baby step it.
Yeah, I agree. And you have to give yourself grace, because you can't just press a button and be there. It takes time. But the other thing I wanted to mention is, like you said, I think it all has to start. And this is one of the things I start with my clients with. And I'll even give you it so you can share it with other people. But I always do a values assessment in the very beginning stages of my work with clients. And basically, it gives people an opportunity to just really think about what's most important to them as they're moving into this next stage of life. And it shifts. Like at one time, I would say it was accomplishment of productivity. And for me now, I would define it more as growth. Like I just want to grow. I don't necessarily have to have the accolades or be so productive, but I want to continue to grow and expand. So this changes, especially in midlife, what our values once were and are now. So I love doing the values assessment with my clients, because it really makes them stop, take a look at what's most important to them as they're now moving into the next half of their life. Because I think, we're not sure. We're not even sure. We've never done that introspective work. And after coming out of doing a values assessment, we all of a sudden know where we need to put the boundaries, what to say yes and no to. Because if it doesn't align with your top 5 to 8 values, then that should be a big fat no. And it should be a big fat no.
I took myself through a similar journey. I didn't know what I was doing, but I started off by creating that vision of my future self.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who did I want to be? And it wasn't 100% clear picture, but it was more based on feeling, thought, that type of thing. And that's when I just wrote down 5 bullet points about who that person was. Yeah. And what I did is I then crafted them into affirmations.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I took it one step further and I tied it to my why.
You are almost literally... You made that up yourself? Almost talking about, I'm doing my blog post happens to be on who am I now? And I walk through people, almost an exercise, just like this, Lucy.
I did that in a moment of crisis when I hit rock bottom. And I refined them over, the next few weeks. It's what I call my why formations.
Yeah.
I write them out every morning. That is the start of my journaling practice, is my why formations. And I have been doing that for the past 6 years. So every day, the first thing I do is I'm putting myself first with my why formations. And those help me make those, when those things come up, those hard decisions come up, I go back to my why formations, and they are what guide me in my decision-making process.
100%. They prioritize your time. They help you make big and small decisions. And they also put the fire under your ass behind your goals, because, this is why I'm doing it, reminding us. The very cool thing that you're doing, and I don't know if you're even aware of this, I'm a big fan of science-based strategies. And the term neuroplasticity, right?
Yes.
So that's what you're doing. You're rewiring and retraining your brain every goddamn morning, Lucy, because every time you go down that lane, you're taking yourself down and developing a new path. And that's how it's done. That's how we move away from the old shit and into and it's those habits every day that create that new neural pathway.
I've also heard it referred to as behavioral activation.
Yep.
And it's basically, this boil it down to the simplest of terms, fake it till you make it.
You just start the science behind that.
Well,
the science behind acting as if.
And you just start by making those decisions that future self would make. And I know it's like chicken and the egg.
Yeah, totally. It totally
somehow
it's funny. One of my 3 confident boosters that I share with women is acting as if. And I'll tell you why. It's not about being disingenuous. In order to eventually feel this way, you have to practice it. You have to act as if. So that's what it's all about. And if you practice it, then you get more natural at it. And then you start to become organic at it. And it just becomes who you are. So you have to act as if. So it's science. There's actually a whole lot of science on it.
I figured there was some science behind it, and eventually I'd figure out what it was. It's just what I've been doing, and it's got me from, being at my lowest lows to where I am now. But going back to what we said earlier, it's made me more resilient when those lows come, because I don't want anyone out there thinking that I don't have the same lows that everyone else does. I am not dealing with the same shit that everyone else is, and that my heart doesn't break the same way anyone else's would when I look into the world. It's just, you're in a better position to frame it.
100%. We never really talked about this, but, again, this is part of the work that I do in creating. Remember, we talked about the empowered energetic state, remember? And we talk about these types of influencers that affect it, and these 7 types of energies that we can have. And none is bad or good, even though some levels of energy are going to serve you better. But the lower ones that are negative and catabolic in nature, because they might be like, woe is me, victim-like, or they're angry and combative and everyone else is to blame for your circumstances, they're also normal emotions. The truth is, loss is sad and disappointing. We need to grieve. Sometimes people and experiences suck, and we have a place in our lives where we can be rightfully angry, responsibly angry. None of that is wrong or right. So all these emotions and energy is exactly normal. The key is knowing that level 1 and 2, that like catabolic negative energy, woe is me, or angry energy, it's not going to serve us well, because it just eats our kishkas out. It just eats us up. So it doesn't mobilize us. So we can recognize it, release it, so we can move forward. But we have to recognize it first in order to move forward, because otherwise it's like the whack-a-mole game. You push it down, it's just going to pop up somewhere else.
And that's it exactly. You have to learn how to feel your feelings and be okay with them, because no matter how hard you try and bury them, they're going to come back.
Oh, you better.
And in my experience, when they come back with a vengeance.
Yeah, it's like when you're on a diet and you have that chocolate cake you put in the refrigerator and you think you're not going to go to it, but like you're going to go to it because you know it's in the refrigerator. Come on, you're not going to forget about it. It's just, it's the truth. It doesn't disappear. You have to address it. That's the key, so that you can move forward. I tell my clients a lot of the time, go have yourself a 30-minute pity party. We'll regroup next week. Go feel bad for yourself, sit in bed, have some bonbons, do what you got to do. Or go throw a temper tantrum, get pissed off and angry, stamp your feet, and we'll regroup, in 30 minutes or 40 minutes, because, you do need to get that out of your system. Yeah.
True. Yeah. Now, Holly, we're going to continue these conversations Tuesday at noon Eastern Standard Time.
Right.
In the meantime, where can people connect with you?
I think your best bet is my website, which is my name, Holly Boxenhorn, as it's spelled, .com. And then all my contact information is there. There's a couple of freebies on there. There is the Mid-Advantage quiz there. There is my 10-question toolkit to ignite reboot, a midlife reboot. There's lots of ways to get, in touch with me through my website. So I think that's the most easiest way.
Perfect. I'll make sure those links are available to anybody that is looking to connect with you further. And my goal here at the Roller Coaster of Midlife is to empower women like everyone listening to thrive in this amazing chapter of our lives. So please learn to embrace this adventure and start rocking midlife. If you want to connect with me, make sure you head over to my website, therollercoasterpodcast.com. You can also grab my free audio course there, which is 3 steps to go from hot mess to badass and start rocking midlife. And if you've enjoyed this episode, then please subscribe and share this with your friends, because together as a community, we can help midlife become, as we said earlier, Holly, we're here to normalize everything that we're going through. So please subscribe and share. And until next time, take care.
So long. Thanks, Lucy.